Welcome everyone to Train Tuesday. I'm your host Jim Wiggin, and so glad to have you on board. Got some exciting things to talk about in this episode of Train Tuesday. But before we get started, if you enjoy the content that you see delivered on a weekly basis, please do us a favor, like and subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell. That way you're notified every time a new video like this drops into our channel. You can also comment. I try to answer as many comments as possible, and we do enjoy the interaction. Well, I hope you're having a great summer, and hopefully you've recovered from the National Model Railroad Show that just happened in Novi, Michigan. Fortunately, Athearn was not able to make it this year, but we do plan on being back next year when they have the Nationals in Chattanooga. So we're going to be talking about something that a lot of you have been asking about on social media, and that is our 260 Moguls. Now, we announced 2 runs over the last few years, and we are going to be delivering these models soon. So I wanted to share with you the early production models that we've gotten. Now, these models are actually production, so what you see is what you're going to get in a few weeks. And you'll be seeing on the Athearn website, you'll start seeing some updates on these Moguls. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started with another Train Tuesday of model train goodness. So the first run that we announced was way back in June of 2021. Now, if you know anything about these models, you'll know that these are the original MDC molds. Now, we wanted to provide these models for a lot of folks because while we've been doing a lot of large steam locomotives over the past years, we realized that a lot of customers were also asking for smaller steam as well. Well, we wanted to bring these molds out of retirement. However, when we did, we noticed that they needed some changes. So they've been upgraded since the last time you probably saw these, and this includes this first run. Now, for the first run, we're offering these in DCC ready, as well as with the Soundtrack's Economy sound decoder. Now we're offering 2 road numbers per road. And another cool thing is they've been updated so that if you do go with the DCC ready version, you can simply plug and play with a 21-pin NEM connector and add the 28mm speaker of your choice. So let's get started and seeing what we have here on our first run. Now, before I get further in depth, I do want to let everybody know that these are Athearn-based models. Steam locomotives back in the day were very specific to their road number. It wasn't as generic as the diesels that showed up much later. Generally, railroad locomotives would differ, even if they were the same classification and working for the same railroad. Sometimes they would have different bells, different lights, different setups altogether. And that is something that's really hard to capture. So what Athearn has done here is we're offering these to you in our mid-tier brand, and this is a good starting point. Now, everything that we're talking about in this first run is based loosely on late 1800s, late turn of the last century. These are a great starting point. So if you're someone that wants a super detail for the railroad of your choice, you've got a blank canvas to work on. Likewise, if you're not as concerned about all of the different details based on a specific road number, you can just run them as is. So the first one we have is Santa Fe, of course, very popular railroad. You can see this one has an oil tender, and we're offering 2 different road numbers for the specific railroad. 204 is pictured on your screen here, and we also have 207. Denver Rio Grande is certainly one of our most popular fallen flag road names, and so it was one that we did want to choose. Again, based typically on late 1800s, early 1900s, you can see that this one is a coal burner, and we're going to offer this in 2 road numbers as well. 942 is seen on your screen, and 940. Here's one that's near and dear to my heart, and definitely at least one of these will find its way into my collection. This is Boston to Maine. Now, of course, Boston to Maine did have Moguls. As the Boston to Maine went further on in history, it was actually one of the first Class 1 railroads to pretty much fully dieselize. These Moguls, well, over time they saw service diminish, and eventually they were used on branch lines and smaller lines until they were phased out altogether. However, some Boston and Maine locomotives found further lives in tourist railroads. Now, an interesting thing that you might want to look into is if you're a member of the Boston and Maine Historical Society, they have issued a book. Go ahead and change my screen here real quick so you can see it, called Steam Trains of Yesteryear. Now, this is a neat book written by Rick K. Furry, and it talks about the Monadnock Steamtown in Northern, which was a railroad that started in New England, specifically in New Hampshire and Vermont, where they used older steam locomotives from the Boston and Maine. So if you're a modeler that maybe is modeling more of the 50s, 60s, even into the 70s, and you really like these steam locomotives, you can definitely justify it by adding it to your fleet and maybe running it with some period correct passenger cars and run a steam fan trip. Those are very popular in the 60s, 70s, even into the 80s, or just a tourist line, or maybe a museum that's on your layout. So there's always things that you can do with these models besides just the original class 1 and 10. So Boston and Maine, again, we're going to offer this in 2 different road numbers. Here you see 1377. We're also going to offer 1382. You're going to see some details that are a little bit different from the previous 2. Athearn designers tried to stay close to what the railroads originally ordered as far as headlights, sand domes, things of that nature. Again, these are not road number specific since they are part of the Athearn brand. But if you're a Boston and Maine modeler and you want to have something that's a smaller steam locomotive with a little bit of work, you can get it exactly like what you want. Sticking onto the East Coast, we've got New York Central. New York Central here being a coal burner. We're going to offer 2 road numbers in this distinctive locomotive. Here on your screen, you see 1707. We're also going to offer 1699. And Southern Pacific. Now, a lot of people give us grief about Southern Pacific, but continually over and over again, whether it be through our surveys or through just sales data alone, Southern Pacific, along with the Denver Rio Grande, continue to be our best selling fallen flag railroads. So, of course, we wanted to offer Southern Pacific in the steam setup, as you see here, the 260. This, of course, is going to be an oil burner, and we're going to offer 2 different road numbers for Southern Pacific, 1822, as you see on your screen, as well as 1827. No, we did not forget our folks up north. We are offering the Canadian National. This is a striking looking locomotive, looks really nice. Coal burner, of course. 2 different road numbers. Number 416 is seen here on your screen, as well as 413. Now, again, the first run that we just talked about, those are available with either the Economy by Soundtracks or they're DCC ready. And again, you've got 2 road numbers to choose from. Now, later on in May of 2023, we announced an additional run because the pre-orders on those first that I just showed you were extremely popular. So we figured there was probably more that we could do to offer for small steam. Now, these we had a little bit of fun with. If you're a modeler that's a certain age, maybe my age or older, you probably remember some of the older MDC 260s. And while they were based on fact, they weren't completely to prototype data. Again, with the Athearn line, we had a little bit of fun. We kind of took that option of maybe this is a locomotive that's been retired from Class 1 service and is seeing use in a tourist line or a fan trip or things of that nature. So we took a little bit of liberty with some of the paint schemes. That being said, you still have a blank canvas if you want to go all out and detail it to your personal preference. Now, this next run that we offered was strictly DCC ready. So these are ready for 21-pin sound decoders and a 28-millimeter speaker. And it keeps the cost down, and it also allows you to put the decoder of your choice in. Now, these are roughly based on 1910 to 1940s era. It's a real rough era, but it gives you a starting point. And just because we say it stops at 1940 doesn't mean you can't run this on a fan trip on your layout in 1960s or 1970s. So again, we got Santa Fe. Santa Fe, it just keeps selling. And so we want to offer this. So this gives you Santa Fe fans 4 different road numbers to choose from. This, in addition with the first run that we announced, tags on. And we've got 503 as well as 504. And of course, these are oil burners. And some of the things like the smokestack, the sand dome, those are specific to Santa Fe practices. Here's a really cool locomotive. And I know we get a lot of guys out there that are very specific about the prototype, but not everybody's like that. Some of us just want to have some fun as well. And the Milwaukee Road paint scheme that we applied to this locomotive is definitely a fun and eye-catching paint scheme. Now, this would be a great model to put along with some coaches and run on a Fremo event or some kind of public event where folks that aren't used to seeing model trains can see something like this. It's definitely going to get some attention. We're offering 2 road numbers for Milwaukee Road, of course, 2966, like you see on your screen, as well as 2967. Going back to my neck of the woods, we've got Maine Central. This looks pretty convincing. This looks like a great model for somebody that's modeling the turn of the last century. If you're someone like me and you just have a shelf layout, but you're not really into the modern era, this is a great model to use as a shelf layout. The nice thing about this is if you're modeling a certain era, you can use 34, 36 foot freight cars, and you can sneak in some 40s as well. But because of those smaller cars, you've got more industries to switch. And let's keep in mind that in the early turn of the century, small locomotives like this did a lot of switching of industries before the trucks started taking over in the late 1940s. This is a great starting point if you're a Maine Central fan. Certainly there's some data out there that you can collect to make this exactly like the prototype if you like. However, if you're like me and you just want to add this to your fleet for that fan trip occasionally, you can certainly do that. 2 road numbers, 246 as well as 247. Another Canadian Pacific this time, we're offering this locomotive also in 2 road numbers, 3007 that you see on your screen, as well as 3011. What would a daylight look like on a 260? Well, Athearn has answered the question for you. Now, before you laugh and say this is totally made up, well, you're right, it is. But wouldn't it be cool if you could justify maybe your layout is set up in the West Coast somewhere and it's the 1950s, 1960s, and you need something to draw your HO scale tourists to your layout? Well, this would be a great tourism type locomotive. Real eye-catching paint scheme. Of course, the daylight paint scheme always looks good. And this is a great starting point for that. So if you just want to run this out of the box with some coaches, it's perfect. However, if you want, you can do some work on it and make it to the scale fidelity that you're looking for with some work and extra details. We're going to offer 2 different road numbers of the Southern Pacific, 1826 as you see here, as well as 1827. You knew Union Pacific was going to be part of the fleet at some point, and of course, here we are. Here is Union Pacific set up as a coal burner. Really cool looking locomotive. Again, if you're somebody that's just got a shelf layout and you want to do some switching, but you're not keen on modern diesels, this is a great little locomotive for that. We're going to offer 2 different road numbers for the Union Pacific, including 40 that you see on your screen and unit number 37. Now let's talk about the features of these. These are small locomotives and they're Athearn, but they're actually pretty well outfitted with some great specific details as well as some features. So first of all, these are based on the old model die casting tooling. Now, when we originally announced these back in 21, we wanted to offer these smaller steam locomotives because we were seeing a demand for it on our social media, our interaction with folks at shows, as well as other sources. When we went ahead and announced these, we noticed that, you know what, there's some fine tuning we can do. So while these were out a little bit longer, we're hoping you really appreciate what the Athearn engineers have done to these locomotives. They've upgraded these locomotives for the 21st century. Basically, two big things that you're going to remember. These are now upgraded to the more modern 21-pin DCC decoders. It's real simple to swap these out or install the decoder of your choice. Simply put, you can take this locomotive and using the same cradle that it comes with, put it upside down on its back, remove the two tender trucks, and there are two long screws that hold on the tender. Removing those two long screws allows you the interior of where the decoder is. Again, you'll want to install a 28 millimeter speaker, a round speaker of your choice, and that's an easy connection of just two connections, and then sliding off the dummy board and adding the decoder of your choice, and your locomotive is now sound ready and ready to go. The other thing that we did, well, we've upgraded the drivetrain, and hopefully you'll get to see that here in a minute, of just how smooth these locomotives are. The other thing that we've done is we've tried to keep it prototype specific to the railroad. That is an Athearn thing. While it's not prototype specific to the actual road number, it is prototype specific to the road name. That means that smokestacks, dome, headlight, lead truck, and tender, they're all going to be based on what that railroad would have ordered at that time. Now, if you go for the sound equipped ones, like I showed you in the first run, those are going to come with the Soundtrax Economy as standard. Now, those are great little decoders, and for a steam locomotive like this, it gives you plenty of options for just out of the box, or even fine-tuning the sound to your liking. If you go for the non-sound, of course, they're all going to include a 21-pin setup. So any sound decoder of your choice will simply go in there very easily. One of the things I do like about the modern Athearn line is if you look at the paint and if you look at the detail of the printing, it's so much better than what we had in the old days. Now, the MDC models were really cool, and in some cases, a lot of those MDC steam locomotives were kits. You don't have to worry about that anymore. These are ready to go right out of the box. That being said, since they are steam locomotives, I highly recommend before you put this into revenue service, let that locomotive break in a little bit. Let those gears break in, run it forwards, run it in reverse for a little bit. If you get a circle of track, just let it run for a little bit. But once that's broken in, they run in very smooth, very sharp printing on these. They're just a really great presentation for a small steam locomotive. We've pretty much tried to pick railroads that were late 1800s, early 1900s. That's your starting point. And of course, that doesn't mean you're limited to that era. You're free to do with these whatever you want. If you want to run these in modern day with some coaches on your layout, by all means, you can do that. But if we were to look at a date era, we're going to be looking at strictly the 1800s to the early 1900s. And like I said earlier, these are not kits. They're fully assembled. They're ready to go. If you get the DCC ready version, you're probably looking at 30 minutes to install the speaker and the decoder of your choice. Now, these locomotives are going to be in stock at your Athearn dealers before you know it. These are probably going to end up about late summer. We're going to probably say about late August or so, but that could change. Now, we are working with our factory to firm up some dates and get some things shipped quicker because we know a lot of things have been a little bit longer than what we've all wanted. This is one of those cases. There's two runs that we're actually going to deliver at the same time. So if you've been waiting for one of these, your wait is almost over. Now, that being said, the first set from 21 that we announced that are available with and without sound, the pre-orders on those did really well. The pre-orders closed on those and they've been manufactured. So if you pre-ordered one of these, you're probably going to get a phone call or an email from your dealer. If you did not, you might want to talk to your dealer now, because while we close the pre-orders on these and we've manufactured everything that's going to be manufactured, your dealer may have ordered more, maybe for store stock, or maybe if they go to shows. You might want to talk to them now, because that might be the only way you're going to get one of these. I guarantee you these are going to go quick. These small steam locomotives have been highly anticipated for quite a while. So contact your dealer now if you did not pre-order. So that's all I've got for you on this. Let's go ahead and run some trains. All right, we're all set here. Boston, Maine, 1382. We're going to swap out this reefer here. Let's go ahead and turn on our headlight. Get the dynamo kick in there. And 2 shorts for forward. Went ahead and put a microphone on that flat card and hopefully capture some of that sound. Now, as I turn down the throttle, you can hear that the economy is set up to have the braking applied, so that's why you're hearing the squealing brakes. Now, these are older roundhouse cars that completely sold out now. We offered those about 2 or 3 years ago, but I picked them up for today's presentation. One thing I want to let you know that the contacts, all-wheel electrical pickup in the tenders. So you're going to want to keep those clean. Also, if you've got a switching layout like I do, you might want to consider powering your frogs. I'm using commercially available Microengineering Code 70 turnouts, and they are currently not powered. It's doing pretty good, but I would highly recommend having those frogs powered up. Now keep in mind, this is brand new out of the box. Right now I'm at speed step 7. So far it's doing pretty good over those non-powered frogs, as small as this locomotive is, but for optimum performance, especially if you've got a shelf layout, I would highly suggest powered frogs. Now these do not come from the factory with a keep alive, but there's certainly room in the tender. If you wanted to, you could add one. Now keep in mind too, since it is an economy, you have your choice of bells, chuff rates, all of that, and that comes complete. There's a user's manual in the decoder-equipped locomotives. We'll also be putting the function chart up on the pages for the product pages for these locomotives as soon as these start shipping, probably the end of August. You can hear the brakes as I'm slowing down. So even out of the box, really smooth running little steam locomotive. Only going to get better as it breaks in. Again, you've got gearing and stuff that's going to need to break in. And honestly, most of you probably won't use this as a shelf layout switching locomotive. A lot of folks will probably buy these for various reasons, but it still can be done. So if you're into switching, you're not into modern locomotives, this might be a neat alternative for you. So again, there you have it. These are going to be coming in probably late August. If you had your pre-orders with the dealer, you're probably getting a phone call or an email here pretty soon. If not, and you still want to grab one or more of these locomotives, I highly suggest to contact your dealer now. These are going to sell out quick. And again, these are great starting points depending on what you want to do with them. But it's a neat alternative to your standard diesel locomotive. And again, if you're modeling turn of the last century, which we know there's a few folks out there that still do, we are hoping you're going to be pleased with these new generation of 260 Moguls from Athearn. So that's all I've got for you today. I want everybody out there to keep enjoying their summer, be happy, be healthy, be safe, do some good modeling, and above all, high greens. Take care, everyone.